Welcome to Master of Chemomstry, where motherhood and science collide. I'm so glad that you found my channel. In today's video, I'm going to tell you 3 ways that Pokemon are like the coronavirus, and then connect it to the science of virus evolution. My name is Joy, and I'm a mom and a teacher, and my passion is to share my experiences and connect them to basic concepts in biology and chemistry. If you like this video, please make sure to hit the like button, as well as to subscribe to my channel so that you can get the latest updates and newest videos as they come out. Also, feel free to share any comments that you'd like in the comment section below. Here's a story. My weekday routine every morning starts with mom chauffeur duties. I got to get the baby to daycare and the kids to school. And recently, as we were pulling out of the driveway with the radio on in the van, we heard the latest report about the new coronavirus. As I was listening, I realized that I hadn't really talked to the kids about what was going on. And I thought if it was making me a little bit alarmed, that they probably were too if they were listening. So I thought it might be a good idea to maybe talk to them about it. I asked them if they'd heard about it yet, and they said not really. And I'm usually very straightforward with my kids about what's going on and try to put things in ways that they can make sense of. So here's what I told them. I started with that most of the people who had it and were affected by it were in China, but that it was spreading. And the reason it spreads is because so many people fly on airplanes and go from country to country for their jobs, for family, for holiday, etc. And that how it spreads is through when someone sneezes or coughs and those liquid droplets that contain the virus are in the air. Someone could just be walking and end up breathing it in, or later could touch the droplet on an arm of a chair and then end up touching their mouth, face, eyes, nose, and then end up becoming infected as well. My son was concerned about whether we could get it, and I answered him honestly that yes, we could. If somebody came to our area and was infected with it, they could potentially spread it, and then we would make sure to go to the hospital and get help as soon as we needed it. Those were the basics, but the report also talked about how the virus was different than what it was before. So this new version of the coronavirus evolved from an older version. This seemed a little trickier to try to explain to my kids. And as I was pulling up to a red light, I realized I could totally explain virus evolution using Pokemon. Here is where motherhood and science collide. First, a little bit of background about Pokemon in my life. It was a thing when I was in middle school and high school, but I didn't really get into it. Fast forward into motherhood, my son's a 2nd grader, and he comes home with some Pokemon trading cards. He ends up wanting more of these Pokemon trading cards for his birthday and for Christmas, and we end up having so many that we needed to get a special binder so that he was able to store them all so they weren't laying all over the floor of my house or in his bed or in his dresser drawers. This became an obsession, and all he could talk about was Pokemon and all the different attacks and the different evolutions and how many hit points and how much damage this was. And my husband and I were not really sure what any of it meant, but we listened and nodded our heads, and it just became more and more and more of a thing for him. Because I was trying to be a kind and considerate mom, I even bought him a special book, the Deluxe Essential Handbook for Pokemon, the need-to-know stats and facts of over 700 Pokemon, and I think he has this book memorized. It got to the point where he was playing this with a friend every day, his version of a Pokemon trading card game battle, and all of a sudden there was Pokemon cards all over our yard, getting mowed over in our landscaping, and then all of a sudden there weren't any Pokemon cards anymore. And one day he told us he gave them all away to one of his friends. So we thought the Pokemon life was over at that point. We weren't glad or sad or anything, but we were just like, okay, on to something new. About a year later, something triggered him to get back into it again. And he started asking for more Pokemon cards. And I was a little unsure about that since he had given all of them away. But I thought, if that's something he's interested in, I might as well let him have another shot at it. And because I never quite understood the game, because there was no set rules that were readily available, and it was really frustrating to try to play with him because I didn't know what the things were that he was talking about, I went out and bought him a special pack that had two card sets already ready to go, and then an actual, it's a paper, but it's like a game setup where you can put your deck and where all the cards go as you do the battle for the Pokemon card trading game. We learned the rules together. My husband also learned to play, and we actually really enjoyed it and still enjoy it today. One of the things that happens during the game is that your Pokemon can evolve into a more powerful version of itself. I know a lot of you are probably familiar with Pikachu, but my son doesn't happen to have a full evolution of Pikachu, so I'm going to be using the evolution of Dratini as my first example. There is a basic stage, a stage 1, and a stage 2. You have to draw those cards during the game and have them in your hand to be able to play them. The level of the evolution is listed on the upper left-hand corner of the card. Another example of a Pokemon evolution is starting with the Pokemon called Pidgey. We will use Pidgey to describe some additional statistics and information found on a Pokemon trading card. On each card on the upper right is the HP. HP stands for hit points. My husband calls it horsepower, and it drives my son crazy every time he says that, but when I look at it, I see HP and all I can think of is horsepower. Anyway, back to the game. On a Pokemon trading card, the HP is the number of points that a Pokemon can lose before it's defeated in a battle, and the HP will typically increase as the Pokemon evolves. Each Pokemon has certain attacks that it can do. The attacks result in damage, and the damage decreases the HP of the opponent. The amount of damage that a Pokemon can do with a particular attack depends on where it's at in its evolution. Basic evolution is much weaker than compared to a stage 2 attack. But to be able to use these attacks, you have to have a certain number of energy cards available. When you draw from your deck of cards, you might get a fire energy, or a water energy, or an electric energy card. And there are many others than what I have shown here and what I've named. Specific energy types and or combinations are required when it's your turn to be able to play an attack for your Pokemon that is in battle. So that's my history and knowledge of Pokemon. It is certainly not expert, but I know a lot more about it than I did a few years ago. Now let's transition to coronavirus. What should you know about that? Before I continue, there's a few things that you should know about me. I have an undergraduate degree in biology, which means I took a wide range of classes in the life sciences, and one of those classes was immunology, which is a study of the defense systems of living things and how it behaves in response to invaders. I also worked in a lab that evaluated and analyzed how the immune system responds to particular viruses and assisted with the study of bovine viral diarrhea virus, a virus that affects cattle. What I'm saying is that although I'm not a PhD in immunology or virology, which is the study of viruses, I still have education, background, and experiences in it. Combine that with my love of teaching, I hope that what I have to share with you today is helpful in understanding how viruses work. According to experts, the coronavirus has evolved, which means that it has changed from what it was like before and is now affecting living things slightly differently. The new coronavirus is called the 2019 novel coronavirus. A coronavirus can cause a version of a typical cold, nasal drippage, cough, and discomfort. But this newer version is causing more extreme symptoms, leading to breathing difficulties, and then can prove deadly. There are many types of coronaviruses, and the coronavirus that we're dealing with was infecting animals and then became transmissible to humans, which is termed as a zoonotic disease. The immune system, the cells and the systems involved in defending the body against foreign invaders, hasn't seen this new version before, so it's having a hard time recognizing it and battling against it. But what does a virus evolving mean? I have 4 points to explain this, and please be aware there are many more details that are involved in this than I have time to share, and I do have links in my description below if you're interested in learning more about those. Number 1. Biology is the study of life, and there are special characteristics that something has to meet to be considered alive, and a virus does not fit all of those categories, so viruses are not considered alive. You can read all the different characteristics on the slide, but the one I'm going to focus on has to do with reproduction. Viruses have to have help to be able to reproduce. They can't do it by themselves. They require a host cell. A host cell is going to be from a living thing. That might be a butterfly, a plant, a dog, or you. If a virus infects it, it's called a host cell. The overview of virus reproduction is that the virus needs to find a way to get inside the host cell. Then the virus hijacks the machinery that the cell uses to make its own materials, and then makes the cell make new virus parts. Eventually, the new viruses leave the cell and then move on to go and infect more cells so that those cells will make more of the virus. Number 2, viruses are made of 2 materials, protein and nucleic acid. Protein is going to give the virus its structure, and there are 4 major categories for its shape. The first is kind of like a spaceship, known as head and tail. The second is filamentous. The third is isometric or icosahedral. And the fourth is known as enveloped, and this is the category that coronavirus is in. What is a nucleic acid like? I want you to think about if you or a family member or your child has ever gotten a Lego set, and then you have these directions that tell you exactly what you need to do, where you start, and what you put on next. This is like the nucleic acid. It's the code, it's the directions for building something. So whether that's a creature, a building, or a machine, that's kind of like the protein that ends up being the end result of what a nucleic acid is coding for. In living cells, there are 2 different types of nucleic acids, DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, and RNA, ribonucleic acid. Coronavirus has RNA. Number 3, DNA and RNA can actually mutate. And what this means is that the code will actually have some change occur in it, like a deletion, an addition, something might get switched around, or something gets repeated. And this mutation activity happens in both living cells and non-living viruses because all of them contain nucleic acids. A mutation can be good if it results in something positive. A mutation can be neutral and it might not cause any change at all, or it could be harmful. An example of when a mutation is bad is when a mutation happens in the code of how quickly a cell should divide. So in human cells, if the cell cycle control is mutated, that means more cells are going to be produced than there should be. And these cells are abnormal, and those cells keep making more of themselves, so you get this mass of abnormal cells, and this can lead to cancer. To give you a little bit better understanding of nucleic acids and mutations, I want to go a little bit deeper into what make them up. They have individual subunits called nucleotides. So imagine that this one Lego is a nucleotide, and we put a bunch of Legos together to make the code. And this code is going to make a particular protein that has a special job to do in the cell, whether it's structure or maybe it's some sort of function. Okay, now if we take all the tan ones off and do a deletion, now the code is completely different. We have a much shorter structure to begin with, but now all these subunits that were there are now gone. So this is not going to code for the same protein as before. Or we could have the normal version, but now a bunch of things get added into it. This is likely not going to be coding for the same protein as before. So this is how visually you can understand how mutations can change the sequence and change the code of a nucleic acid. So if DNA or RNA doesn't have the same code as before, it could be better, it could not change at all, or it could be something that is detrimental. And by the way, when you hear the word evolution being used in science, changes in nucleic acids are the key component. How this comes into play with viruses is they mutate a lot. Remember, they use host cells, DNA, and hijack it to make more of their own materials. And so if they're going to be going from cell to cell, animal to animal, species to species, day after day, month after month, year after year, what their nucleic acids and proteins were like before could be very different from what they're like days, months, or years later. Number 4, some viruses get encased with their host cell's membrane like coronavirus. These viruses are called enveloped viruses. And what it means is that when they leave the cell, part of the cell membrane of that host cell becomes part of the virus structure. A cell membrane is like a special barrier that separates the inside of a cell from the outside of the cell. It contains something called phospholipids It also has embedded proteins, as well as special sugars that are attached on the outside. What's important here are the sugars that are found on the outside of the cell membrane. These are little identifiers to tell the immune system of the host cell that that cell belongs there. And if the immune system cells find that the combination is wrong or different or absent, they're going to be targeting a particular cell for search and destroy to get rid of it. If everything looks okay, the immune system cell will move on and leave that cell alone. Enveloped viruses use this to their advantage as they go from cell to cell, taking parts of the cell membranes with them as they go. So viruses can go through multiple animals of one species, and then maybe multiple animals of another species, and if the virus changes enough that it can start infecting humans, then multiple humans. So what happens when an individual gets infected with a virus is that the virus may have so many similar structures on it that it can slip by the immune system, kind of like it's wearing camouflage. Now that you know a little bit about Pokemon and you know a little bit about viruses, what are the 3 ways that Pokemon are like the coronavirus? Number 1, as a virus mutates, it could gain new features, just like a Pokemon gains new features as it goes through its evolution from basic to stage 1 to stage 2. Number 2, virus evasion tactics increase every time they gain new features from the cells that they have previously infected, which makes them harder to get rid of. This is similar to Pokemon because their HP or their hit points increase as they evolve. And as they evolve, the more hit points they have, the harder it is to defeat them in battle. Number 3, not only do viruses' features potentially change, but also their abilities could change when they evolve due to changes in nucleic acids, due to mutations in interactions with host cells. The result could be a new virus that is more contagious and harder to fight. This can be compared to how Pokemon have new or more damaging attacks each time they evolve. The final thing that I want to talk about that will wrap everything up is that when there's a Pokemon battle going on, there's going to be 2 players. And when we're talking about you getting invaded by a virus, your immune system is the second player and the virus is the first player. And they're going up against each other. Your immune system has multiple components and multiple options that it could play, like neutrophils, eosinophils, T cells, B cells. This is just like how in a Pokemon trading card game that you could have multiple Pokemon that you could choose to play to battle against your opponent. And just like how each Pokemon has different attacks, different amounts of damage it can cause, different hit points, our immune system cells are activated or triggered to work in a particular way against certain types of invaders and work better against certain ones than others and have certain ways of defending or attacking or getting rid of that invader. So the next time you're ill, you can think about how your body is going through some Pokemon battles between the immune system and whatever it is that you're fighting. All right, as a mom and a teacher, I love to share my experiences and wisdom, and so here are the 2 takeaways from this video. Number 1, coronavirus is an enveloped virus that has RNA as its nucleic acid. All viruses mutate and many can take structures from their host cell to make it easier for them to hide from the host cell's immune system. Many viruses like coronavirus can be transmitted from species to species, and changes in nucleic acid and the resulting structures are major factors in how that happens. Number 2, I think Pokemon is an excellent analogy for understanding virus evolution. If HP, damage, energies, and Pokemon evolution is still confusing to you, I highly encourage you check out the online trading card game or buy a pack and follow the instructions and see if you like it. Don't knock it till you try it. Do you have a story like mine? Or do you have an analogy that helps make it easier to understand a science concept? Please feel free to share below. Do you have any questions about the biology or chemistry discussed in this video? Please let me know and I would be happy to answer, look up the answer, or make a video about it. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this content. Our experiences can teach us so much and I love sharing them with you. Thanks for watching.